Yes, you ladies, I want you to value yourself. Only time you need a man is to lift something heavy, really. Let God guard your heart to the right man.
Welcome back.
Remember,
In a lot of situations, we look to the older members of our community to give us guidance and help us with difficulties that we may face. But even when we get that kind of counsel, that kind of advice, I recommend that we take it with a grain of salt. And why am I saying that? Well, so that I won't waste your time, let's get into this video. It's a video of Kendra G and her father, and he had some interesting things to say. So let's get into the video and find out what it was he had to say and what we can learn from it.
This is my father.
peace and love to everybody. And remember, you can do it because God made it possible for you to do.
Dad, you want to give the ladies some advice?
Yes, you ladies, I want you to value yourself. Only time you need a man is to lift something heavy, really. Let God guard your heart to the right man. Remember, you are not second to nobody. You are first to everything. Because of you, we have life. You are the life givers. As a matter of fact, you are the eyes of God. He made woman. He made man first, but then he said, I can do better. So he made you. So remember that. Value yourself, because if you don't, who's going to? And make sure she pays me rent for being here for 3 days.
So now, right away, I'm sure you can see why I give a caution. When going to elders in the community, man, I think it would be best to take the sentiments that they give us, but make sure that the sentiment is coming from the right place. What they're giving you is information that's correct. That's what I would advocate for. Because there are several things that were said that just don't hold weight. They don't. Now, I am in full agreement with the fact that our sisters should value themselves. Every human being has value. And if you are not aware of your value, then you should take the time to examine yourself. Examine the things that you are capable of doing, the gifts that you've been given, and you will find out that you do have some value. But now, as far as what this brother was saying, first of all, let me say that I would never, ever disrespect any of the elders of our community. I think that they're an invaluable asset. But in this particular instance, there are a lot of things that I disagree with. Okay? And we're going to get into them. And usually, you will find that I'm very practical when it comes to things that I like to talk about. I don't really delve into the realm of spirituality. Most of the time, I allow that to be done by better men. And I think that that's more of a personal thing anyway. But because the topic that was brought up was personal and spiritual, then that's the route that we're going to take with this particular video. And I want you just to bear with me, okay? So now the first thing, he made it clear that a woman's value should be looked at in contrast with a man's value. And he makes that clear because he says that the only thing that men are good for are lifting heavy things. And then he goes on to make a statement about creation. And that's why I say that this particular segment has to deal with spirituality, because he brings it up. He brings up spirituality. He talks about how it is that man was created first. God created man first. So I'm assuming that the God he's referring to is the God of the Bible. Some refer to him as the Most High. Some call him Yahweh. Some call him Jehovah. I'm talking about all of the titles, the names for the God of the Bible, because that's who he's referring to. And so he says once again that Adam was created first, but then God said that he could do better. He created woman. Now, if you would for a moment, bear with me as I mentioned. Tell me what book, what chapter, and what verse that comes from. That the creation of man was eclipsed by the creation of woman. We're not trying to be belligerent. I just would like to know where expressly that thought came from. Did it come from the Bible? Well, if you are looking and you are interested in what the Bible actually says, then let's go. Let's see if we can find it. And I've already looked at it for you. It's found in the account that speaks about the first marriage. That's found in Genesis chapter 2, 18 through 25. And we're using the New International Version of the Bible. So now as you look through those verses, my encouragement would be to read the whole chapter. But as you look through these verses, you'll notice that what the brother said is completely incorrect. It's completely incorrect. So now, after giving Adam his assignment, after telling him what was required of him, verse 18, we notice that God looks upon Adam and he notices that Adam is lacking. What is he lacking? He said that it was not good for man to be alone. And so he's going to make a helper suitable for him. And so the next verses, 19 and 20, it showed that Adam is going about the assignment that God has given him to name the animals. And every animal that God would bring to Adam, he would name it. But then you notice there in verse 20, the latter part, there's a conclusion that's made. But for Adam, no suitable helper was found. So Adam is going about his business. He's naming the animals and he's noticing that each animal has a mate. But there is no mate for Adam. So what does God do? There in verse 21 and 22, it says that God causes a deep sleep to come over Adam. And while Adam is sleeping, he takes one of Adam's ribs. He builds the woman from Adam's rib. And then verse 22 mentions then he brought the woman to the man. So now, what was the purpose? According to these verses, who was first? Adam was first. And then as a complement of him, then the woman was created. And verse 18 makes it clear that the reason why she was created, it says, as a helper suitable for him. So she's a helpmeet. That's how a lot of verses describe it. So now what is Adam's reaction? There in verse 23, he says, this is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, for she was taken out of man. Right? And then here is what we like to call the first marriage. There in verse 24, that is why a man leaves his father and his mother is united to his wife, and they become one flesh. So now notice how things change. Verse 25. And it says Adam and his wife were both naked and they felt no shame. So now, instead of having a man and a woman, you now have a husband and a wife in verse 25. So here's the first marriage that was ever performed. But you notice that the reason for the creation of woman was not simply, as he mentioned, to be the eyes of God. That isn't supported by scriptures either. You won't find that anywhere in the Bible. But it was, her creation was meant for her to be a helper to Adam. Now that doesn't mean that she is unworthy of love, unworthy of respect, unworthy of being treated with common decency. It just meant that her creation was based upon a desire for God to provide a helper for Adam. Okay? So now, if what this brother was saying in this particular video in regards to men and women was incorrect, right? Especially when it comes to relationships, then what's the right way? What is the way that we can look at and say, okay, this is the standard that I need to abide by? Well, let's go back. We'll go back to that same book, the Bible, and we'll look at 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3, and we're still in the New International Version. Notice what it says. It says, but I want you to realize, and this is Paul speaking, that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is man, and the head of Christ is God. So do you notice that? In that verse, the order of headship, God is first, then Christ, then the man, then the woman. Okay? That's 1 Corinthians 11, 3. So now what can we gain from that particular verse? And this is why I'm a staunch advocate of expressing thoughts correctly. Expressing thoughts correctly. Do you see the hierarchy when it comes to headship? Why is it that way? Why do we look at it? Why is it beneficial? Because think about it. At every level that you go up, there's more protection. So let's say, for instance, you have the wife and the children that are there. Who's responsible for protecting the wife and the children? The husband. Okay? And who in turn protects the husband? Christ. And then who protects everyone? God. So every time you go up, there's more protection. And in a family situation, when the person decides that they are going to act contrary to what this hierarchy is stating, then you take yourself away from protections that have been put in place for you. Okay? So now, as I mentioned, I don't usually do this. This is a departure for me. And you can tell that I'm very emotional about this because I'm trying to understand how is it that someone of this brother's age would be passing out this kind of misinformation and misquoting things from scripture. You won't find any of what he said in scripture. The Bible doesn't speak of God looking at woman as being a better creation than man. And it doesn't speak of the woman being the eyes of God. It doesn't. Now, are we trying to take away from the position that women hold? Absolutely not. Because they are the means by which we produce life. That's something that they were blessed with. And they ought to be respected. They ought to be loved. But at the same time, it's a necessity for us to look at that scripture there, 1 Corinthians 11:3, and you'll see that in order for an individual to be a husband, in order for a man to be a husband, he has to be willing to take on the leadership role. Right? Because that's what it's saying. The head of the woman is the man. So that demands that a man be willing to take on the leadership role. It demands that he be trained in the leadership role. But then if the scripture says that the head of the woman is the man, that also means that the woman has to be willing to come under the headship of the man. So it's things that are required on both sides. A man has to develop leadership qualities worthy of a wife, and the wife has to develop submissive qualities worthy of a husband. And when you put the two together, then you can see that the situation works out well. That's from scripture. Now, a lot of people are not inclined to believe scripture. A lot of people are inclined to say that that's a white man's book or anything else such as that. But the principles that are espoused cannot be argued with. If as a community we looked at these things and we took them to heart and we used and applied them, then our marriages would last just like the marriages in the 1950s and 60s. The marital rate would go up and the divorce rate would come down. But we can't get together on anything if the information that's being given is incorrect, if the quotations that are being used are not correct, if the whole sentiment of what is being said is incorrect, then you will never get to the destination that you're trying to get to because you have the wrong directions. So please, if you're going to say something, make sure what you say is factual, especially if you're quoting from a book that a lot of people base their lives on. So those are my thoughts on the video, man. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Be easy.